Today, here we are. I'm with Steve Peroff of the Peroff team out of Georgina area. Why can I never say that correctly, Steve? And one day I will. And we're thrilled to have Steve a part of our brokerage. Steve's been a part of our brokerage now for going over 10 years right now, Steve, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's gonna talk to us about that journey. And yes, life before Keller Williams was a thing. And he's gonna talk to us about that and his, being in the industry for 30 or so years and everything that he's seen and his experiences and of course, what he's doing today to still be one of the top agents in that area. Steve, welcome. Happy to have you here. How you doing today?
The world's good. Well, I mean, I'm not sure about the world, but I'm good.
Yeah, well, that's the most important
thing. I think we have some healing going on. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, Steve, I quickly said you've been with this for 10 years, and even over the 10 years at KW, like what have you seen change over that time?
Oh man. Well, if you want to go right back to 1989, I mean, half the agents that might be on this call weren't even born yet, but
yeah.
There was no computers. We used to get our information from fiche. There was a line printer in the office where you'd get your listing and it'd say the address, detached, the number of bedrooms, whether it had a garage or not, maybe a basement or whatever. You never knew what the house looked like. You'd have to go drive by it. Get this, there were no lock boxes. You used to have to drive to all the real estate offices to pick up keys.
Yeah.
I think I was one of the first local agents to invest in lock boxes.
A trendsetter back then. A trendsetter. I like it.
Yeah, a trendsetter. So it certainly is different. It certainly is different.
Very good.
We used to get our MLS. Marvin always talks about it, in the old books, and the dailies used to be delivered to the office. If you wanted to see new listings or price changes, they'd be in sheets that you would update your little book on. So it was a much slower world and more methodical. We used to have our own little systems. Now the systems are sort of handed to us.
Right. So take us back. So you've been, I don't know, maybe you don't want to share this. How long have you actually been a licensed realtor?
Well, since February 5th, 1989.
1989. Very good.
I think that makes this my 32nd full year.
Wow. I don't want to date you or nor myself, but I may have just been entering high school then. Very good. So what made Steve Peroff go get his real estate license? Well, what prompted you to do that?
I think it was just it was time for something different. I worked in a totally different industry prior to that. I'm from Toronto, born and raised, and I used to work in live theater. So when I was younger, I used to act. Then I got into production. My brothers and I owned theaters, live theaters. We owned the Truck Theater where we produced hundreds of shows. We owned the Bayview Playhouse up on Eglinton Avenue, or on Bayview Avenue by Eglinton. I ran the theaters at Harborfront as I evolved in the business. And then we had a baby who's now 34 years old and sells real estate. So I think that just made us change a little bit. My wife decided she didn't want to work anymore, and one income working in the theater business wasn't enough. So we decided to make a change, moved out of the city. We ended up here in Keswick, where my wife is from. Colleen is from here originally. She never thought she'd end up here, but it was a great place for real estate. Now we're out of the city, live on the lake, have the best of everything, really. So it worked out really well. So we ended up in real estate. So
yeah, no, that's it. I don't think I ever known that you were in theater before. That's intriguing. There's actually over the last couple of weeks, I've learned about more and more agents coming from the theater or coming from that background. It's interesting.
Well, I guess we're sort of showmen, so to speak.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
That's what real estate's all about. It's not, and I don't say that in a false manner, but you just have to be a bit of a chameleon to be in this business because you deal with so many different types of people. And I'm not talking about being dishonest. I'm just trying to say that you have to learn how to speak to people at where they're at if you're going to be successful. So I can sell a house one day at $100,000 back in the old days. And yes, there were listings under $100,000 for a detached home, or I could sell one at $3 million. So it was important that you learned how to speak to everyone. And, working in the theater, it was sort of like real estate. People want to be entertained. In the theater business, people would leave their troubles at the door. When I started in real estate in 1989, we headed into a recession in 1990, 91, and we were in that for 7 years. And you were dealing with people in their real lives at that time, sitting at their kitchen tables. They had paid high for properties in 88 and 89, and they lost 35% of their value over that 7 years. And it was a big issue. And it's happened since then, but we've come right back quickly. And values are considerably higher than where they were in 2008 during the recession, and then again in 2017 when they peaked and they collapsed, and then they came back again. But back then it took 7 years just to bottom out.
Right.
So it was a different time and place for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I know we were talking about this, as some of the leaders in within the brokerage is, for some of our agents that haven't experienced that downturn or that dip in the market, it can be kind of unnerving. But for someone like you that's seen that happen 3 or 4 times now, and you've said it now a couple of times, it's come back. Like it continually does come back, right? Is that the message that you kind of tell your clients?
Absolutely. And as far as investment goes, it always goes up over time. And certainly you may be down at the bottom of the trough sometimes, but if you hold on, it will come back as well. So I think that's the key to investment as well. If you bought at the wrong time, just go long term if you can afford to, and try not to unload. But we did unload back in the early 90s because there was no sign of it coming back quickly. So.
Yeah. No, I remember my father unloading some of his properties back then, and for some, that was their only choice. And my hindsight's 2020. Of course, everyone wishes they hung on to what they sold back then, right?
But I must say, as a young realtor coming into the business, I'm sort of glad that I came in at that time because it taught us a valuable lesson, and that lesson was how to work.
Yeah.
Because real estate is about work. It's not about getting your license, going to work, at 11, going to lunch, having a drink, coming back, make a couple calls, come back in at 6 or 7, present an offer and go home. I mean, that's not what it's about. And those agents that were already there who rode the wave, there was a wave in the late 80s who came in 1985, 86. And it was like order writing time. You could just get into real estate if you knew somebody, much like it is today in a way. You're going to do well. But I came in and the market collapsed, and I had to learn how to work, how to make it happen. And those agents that didn't know how to work, they really struggled. And a lot of them may have, opted out of the business, and those that were hard workers put their nose to the grindstone and learned how to work. So, and that's, where, some of the old timers, got their stripes, was in that tough marketplace. So tough markets are a good time to learn and to figure things out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Don't give up.
Don't give up yet. So what do you say? So, you've created the team and your brand, and you got a significant market share where you do your trading or selling real estate. But that just doesn't happen overnight, as you said. Oh, you got to put in hard work.
No.
So what do you say? What do you say to new agents coming into the business or looking to join your team? What does that look like?
Well, I say, like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
I took sort of a building block approach. You looked at it. I always looked at what other agents were doing. And back in my day, those agents were guys like Craig Proctor, one of the biggest coaches that's out there right now, Bruce and Gloria Keith, the Mitchells, who are, big Keller Williams people, Tom Mitchell, Diane Mitchell. We all sort of started at the same time. So we were all taking peeks at, what each other was doing. We took the best out of each one and, created our own brand. And others have gone off to different things. I mean, Diane went off to running Canada. Craig went off to, open his own coaching program. Tom and I may have been the old stalwarts and stayed in the business. Even Bruce Keith went off. He became one of Tom Ferry's biggest coaching successes and is now an independent. So those were the guys that we all learned from back in the day. We all learned from one another, and you can still do that today. You got to watch what your competitors are doing. don't be envious or jealous. Just take what you like about what they're doing and apply that. And nowadays there are coaching programs that help you. Back in our day, there weren't many, so
Yeah. Yeah. That's
they were
interesting.
just developing, really.
It's kind of neat too, as you mentioned all those names and like significant names in the industry. Especially in Canada
Yes.
and to the extent, Craig, internationally. Kind of neat that they're all from the same area though. Like that must have been a neat time to really, hit the ground running and kind of earn your stripes, because those are some amazing minds in the real estate
Yeah.
world.
I think it's Lake Simcoe water.
That must be it. Yeah. Yeah. So if you want to enhance your game, move to Lake Simcoe to
But
call
we got
Steve.
enough agents here. We don't need any more.
Very good. Very good. Very good. So I talked briefly about the market share that you've been able to garner over the years. What's, okay, so you just said there's a lot of agents that are in the industry. How do you keep that market share? How do you keep that relevance, or how do you keep that phone ringing in a sense?
Well, I'd have to say it hasn't been easy. When you think about it, back in the day, when I started, there were probably, I think the numbers got up to about 40,000 agents. The culling of the herd occurred during that 7-year recession, and we got down to about 14,000.
Yeah.
So those of us that stood out at that time really got to build our brands even bigger at that time. Nowadays, there's over 55,000 agents. I think that's the number in Trev. So they're all entering our marketplace. So back in the day then, and even maybe 10 or 15 years ago, most of the local real estate here in Georgina was done by Georgina agents. Now I would say, and I haven't done the stats on that, but if you were to have a close look and analyze it, you'd probably say that not even half of that is being done by local agents. A lot of them are coming in from Toronto because they have nowhere else to go. If they have a buyer, they're going to take that buyer wherever they have to in order to make that deal. So it has been a little bit difficult of a journey there, and we really haven't. We were fortunate. I mean, we built up, we got known, and we continued to do what made us successful. And what made us successful in those days was personal marketing, or personal promotion and marketing. So we did a lot of print back in those days. It's not as prevalent today. It still helps to keep you exposed in the marketplace, but we had to move digitally. And then once COVID came along, I mean, everything is digital now for us. Very, very little print, maybe some cards, some just listed or just sold, that kind of thing. But there's no print in newspaper. There's no print in magazine right now. And COVID I'd have to say it sort of helped us to relieve ourselves of that financial burden. But, we were concerned that if that's how you built yourself up, that if you removed that, what would happen to your business? And so we're still fine tuning our digital presence. It isn't easy for old guys to do that. So you leverage yourself and you bring in other people that understand it and know how to do it. And I have to say, even as a younger agent, if that's not your gift, don't be afraid to leverage yourself and bring somebody in who knows how to do it. I mean, let's face it, you're running a business.
Yeah.
It's not just about making the sale and going on to the next one. You're running a business. And if you look at it like that, you can't be afraid or concerned about spending money to make money, as long as you're doing it in a well thought out manner.
Yeah, no, I love that. We often look at things, we talk about things. If I'm going to invest in something, what's my ROI? I got to get an ROI on it.
Right.
Right. And that's a big, that's not a Keller Williams-ism. That's a business 101-ism. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And people often ask me, and we get into our conversations about why KW. And one of the things for me was it helped me see that being a realtor is not being a realtor. It's about running and operating a business, just as you said, right?
Right.
It's important to think like that. That's fantastic. So you said, leveraging and leaning on some other people to kind of pick up the pieces or that are what am I trying to say? They are proficient in the things that they do. So for instance, you might be great at acquiring the listing, and the next person might be great at advertising the listing. Is that how you're kind of taking your approach on your team at the moment, is pulling in some of those pieces that you know are going to keep adding fuel to that fire?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yes. Back, I keep going back, but you sort of have to go back to your roots so that you know how you built it, right? And I guess it was my third year in the business that I hired a personal assistant. So I leveraged myself there. All the $15 or $20 an hour type um, functions, you delegated those off, because as a realtor, you got to get in front of buyers and sellers and spend your time out on the road. So I had a personal assistant, and then from there, I went to actually not bringing somebody on my team. Back in those days, I used to have leads falling off my desk. I'd love to be back to those days again, but so I would refer those out to other agents and just take a referral for it. And I started that as early as 1993, but then I sort of went to the team approach in 2000, which really took off by about 2005. So for the last 15 or 20 years, we have been a team. And from there, we had, mine aren't set up necessarily as buyer's agents. I look at having agents come in that can run their business within our business, so they can work with buyers or they can work with sellers. And certainly those buyers are going to become sellers. So as the lead agent, I don't take them and say, okay, now I'm going to work with that buyer as a seller. I let the agents deal with those buyers as their clients and their sellers, but they're working within our system. So we provide the marketing, the admin support, and everything that goes along with that. And now, with how long we've been in the business, you also have a fair amount of knowledge that you can share with any of the younger agents coming in as well. So I've leveraged myself in that approach. And then years ago, we did hire a marketing person, and that sort of evolved into more in our case now. We have Eli, who is, we call him the assistant team leader, not team leader in the Keller Williams sense, but team leader on our team. And Pierre is our operational manager and our marketing support. And so that's leveraged off as well, which leads me to what I deal with mostly are the past client base that I've had, and I've been fortunate to develop and deal with over the years, without going out to maybe a lot of the newer business, and I delegate that off to Eli or other individuals on the team. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. And do you often see that's perhaps what, whether we call them individual agents or agents in general, is that a mistake that they're making, is not leveraging some of those tasks off sooner than later to keep building their
yeah,
business?
there is a disease that you can do it better than anybody else,
Yeah.
and you have to let that go. So even if all the great coaches say, even if they're doing it at 80% of what you could do it at, you're better off leveraging it off, because then you can do more. And when I started the team, it wasn't necessarily more about making more money. It was about having more time, because my kids were young at that time. They played, they were involved in different activities, and I wanted to be part of those activities, and I couldn't do that if I had evening appointments all the time. So I leveraged myself off. I gave up some of the money. I helped somebody else develop their business, and that gave me more time, and I continued to make the same amount of money, if not more, from evolving into a team. So it isn't always about the money. It's about quality of life.
Yeah.
And why are we working so hard? Real estate isn't who I am, it's what I do. And I try to do all these other things, and real estate helps me do those things. Right.
Right. So as a team owner and someone that's spent, obviously the better part of the last, 30 years in real estate or longer, how
Half my
do
life.
yeah. How do you protect, your time away from work, as it were? Because we all know being a realtor sometimes is that 24-hour job, but if you don't put boundaries in place, like what do you do to protect that?
Well, by leveraging yourself, especially if you're operating your own business, there's no secret that buyers do take a lot of your time. And when you become a strong lister, that's where you really leverage your time, because listings are a lot easier to deal with. There's more control of your time. Whereas when you're working with a buyer, you could have decided, well, I'm going to take Friday night off and Saturday and that this weekend. All of a sudden on Friday night, you get a call from, a buyer or from a client in Toronto and says, "Hey, Steve, great news. We just sold our house. Yeah, we want to come up tomorrow and take a look at that place." And then as a single agent, you can't say, well, I can't do it,
Right.
because I've taken time, or I'm taking time away with my family. If you do that, you lose that client. So by leveraging yourself and delegating that and referring it off to, your buyer agent or another agent on the team, and making sure that they too have time off in a way. Their time could be during the week. I choose to take more time off on my weekends. So I'd like to think I only work 5 days a week, but certainly I'll work that half day on the weekend if I have to. And technology has sort of helped that as well, because you can sit at home and do an offer through DocuSign or Athenasign, whereas in the old days we used to drive to Toronto with our offers.
Right.
There's 6 copies, sign here, press hard, right? So
Yeah.
it's a different world, and it's a lot easier in some respects, but it's a lot more difficult in others.
Right.
So.
Right. We can all see the easier part, like just as you said, you send a DocuSign, a Athenasign, what have you, and next thing you know, you got an offer that you're sending over, and it becomes pretty easy. From the more difficult side, though, I'm curious of how you see it. If perhaps it's more difficult. I have my ideas, but I'd love to get your opinion on
You
that.
mean the business
The
itself?
business, yeah. How?
Yeah, I think to separate yourself from the business is harder,
Right.
because and early on, we didn't have pagers then in those days either. Pagers were just coming in at that time. We certainly didn't have smartphones. Our phones were as big as our shoes, right?
Yeah.
With the big antenna on it.
That's right.
And I did the first year of my business without a phone. So think about that. If somebody can't get a hold of you, there's no reason that you have to call them back right away.
Yeah.
And people would wait. They'd be patient. Nowadays, there's no patience, because they know that you have a smartphone. They know that you're getting your emails. They can text you directly. They can communicate with you directly. And if you don't answer it right away, whereas before you could say, well, I'll fax it to you tomorrow. Now there's none of that. It's like they want you to respond when they want you to respond.
Right.
So those kinds of things, the speed in which you have to respond to somebody is a challenge that technology has created for us. And we also have to learn to manage that. So the more organized you are, the more information you keep in your phone, or just a simple thing like a phone number, updating, putting an agent phone number in your phone, so you don't have to say, oh, I've left it at the office, or
Yeah.
I got to log into Treb to find that agent. So if it's there on my phone and I need to transfer or send that number to somebody else on my team, I already have it there. So you just create new habits that try to make your life more easier.
Sure. Yeah.
And use that technology to try to make it easier, even though it's trying to make it more difficult for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, absolutely it does. And while you're chatting there, I'm curious to know on your thoughts on, obviously in this type of market, we're in multiple offers, whether you're the buyer or the seller, and things are pretty hot at the moment. And I don't want to say it's a lost art, but do you think there's some value loss, or if you're a buyer's agent? I used to love offer presentations. If I was the buyer's agent, or on both sides, I used to love it, because I chose, I don't know about you, but I chose to show up every time if I had to go present an offer for my buyer. Like that, obviously with COVID and with the age of digital, that's changed.
Well, even putting aside COVID and the digital age, what changed that really was buyer agency. And back, in the 90s, both the listing agent and what we now call the cooperating broker, their fiduciary duty was actually to the seller.
Right. Yeah.
And you had to be fair to the buying agent. And I would always look at to the buyer, I should say. I would always look at the buyer as my client. They're my friend. I have to work for them. Although my fiduciary duty was to the seller. So that's all changed now. And because of that, you could, as the listing agent, now say, well, you know what, I can't come and be with your buyer to negotiate the deal directly with your buyer. So why should I let you come and negotiate your buyer's offer with my seller?
Interesting. Yeah.
So that in itself is a totally different mindset. And, you, as a buyer's agent, now you sort of lost your leverage of going in to present your offer. And I used to like it when the buyer's agents came in, because if I was having trouble with my seller,
Yeah,
it
sure.
would be like a tag team almost. And not to say that, you're trying to talk them into taking a deal that isn't good for them, but you're trying to, maybe get them to see a different viewpoint on why
Right.
they should, maybe have more flexibility, or why they should take that offer, and just have somebody come in that was sort of working along the same lines as you. And they may have had a different way of communicating that message to your
Yeah.
client. So in a way that sort of helped as well get people to the table.
And that's such a great point. And one of the points that I always make to newer agents, and I remember years ago, and I, of course, I've been in the business a third of the time that you've been in the business. However, when I first started representing sellers, even on the buyer side, I didn't realize it was almost like a two-way negotiation. I'm negotiating with you because you're the listing agent, and
Yes.
I'm almost negotiating and trying to explain both sides to the buyer or to my client. Like there's a real balance or juggle there that has to take place.
Well, you have to bring reality to the table, because, just because the buyer thinks it's going to be a certain way or wants it to be a certain way, um, a successful transaction is making sure that everybody is happy. But really, you know, not everybody is happy, even in what we would consider to be a good deal, because the seller thinks that they may have given a little bit too much and the buyer thinks that they gave a little bit too much. And sometimes we even have to give a little bit too much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
hopefully, not having to negotiate our commission all the time, but um, let's face it, we're asked to do it, and whether we do it is up to us as individuals. So
Yeah. Yeah, I always look at it when you're always when each party is a little bit happy and a little bit annoyed, you typically have a pretty good deal.
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Very
And
good.
nowadays, I mean, it's really with the multiple offers that are going on now. I mean, it's just incredible. Like the last couple of offers we've done. I mean, Eli had 56 showings in 4 days on one of our listings, had 10 offers on the property, and there's going to be some people that are, there's going to be one winner, right, or two winners out of that. The seller, that they're going to win all the time, and is the buyer who's successful really the winner?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. So
and then
that's interesting.
you
Yeah.
have nine losers. No, I don't want to call them losers, but nine unsuccessful people. And what about those others that actually looked at the property? That's a lot of pent up buyers out there that
Yeah.
didn't come to the table.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So how are you coaching your seller clients at the moment? I'm curious on that because obviously the market typically dictates how many offers that you're going to get on a property, especially in the recent times. Are
right.
you prepping for that, and you telling you're coaching your seller clients and what that's going to be like and so forth?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, most definitely you have to. I believe you have to. I mean, there's you have to be honest and let them know what's going on. Um, I'm in between, just holding off for 48 hours on an offer versus, 4 or 5 days or even a week, because it's a lot of management that goes into that. A lot of phone calls happen in that period of time. And if you can get enough showings within a 48-hour period, why not do it quicker rather than, bringing in, especially during COVID. I mean, 56 physical showings of people walking through the door. Do you really need that many people in order to drive the negotiation process?
Right.
So you have to have a conversation with the seller about the irrevocability of an offer. Because typically, even when a market is so-called normal, I would always hold for 24 hours. That gives you a chance to shake the bushes, and that's in the best interest of your seller. I know a lot of agents don't like that, but I think when the shoe's on the other foot, they understand it, right? Because there's
Yeah.
enough people that are going to see a house. And in the old days, you didn't even have to tell somebody you had an offer on the property.
Right.
Now, it's almost mandatory. Well, it is mandatory. Well, it isn't a law, but you have to tell those 55 agents that, number 56 did bring an offer, because that's
That's
in the
right.
best interest of your seller.
Yeah.
And they need to know how many offers there are on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
So
back in the
true.
day is like, you didn't do that. It's like if they communicate with you that they had interest, well, too bad, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
nowadays we're documenting everything, especially using Broker Bay. It's there, so it's a simple click of the finger to say, okay, you know, one offer registered, two offers registered.
of course, yeah. And I find it interesting too. Like, we think we had to hold offers for 5 or 6 or 7 days and get those 50 offers, but at the end of the day, it's the client. And
Yes.
that seller, if they're ecstatic on 2 days of showings, and if we get 3, 4, 5 offers, or 10 in some cases, they're the ones that get to gauge the success of the sale, right? It's
Yes.
not whether the fact we got to sell it for a record price or anything like that. At the end of the day, that's who decides.
But they're also experiencing discomfort of being a seller, because selling
Yeah.
your house is not an easy process. You know, it's inconvenient. You know, I think every agent should go away and sell their own house to feel how inconvenient it is, because we forget that, but how a
Yeah.
seller really feels. You're having strangers coming in your house, putting COVID aside, you're having strangers coming in your house and judging your home. Then they're there for an hour and the feed comes back not interested. Well, how did they stay in the house for an hour and they're not
Right.
interested? They had to have some interest.
Yeah.
You know, the agent isn't being, you know, forthwith with the comments or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. Why would you want to have that many people if you can still get the same result in a shorter period of time? Our job is to get them the highest price with the least inconvenience in the shortest amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So, so I really question the long the long holding the offers, but you almost are forced to do that because of the way the market is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And
so maybe
definitely,
the key is to go for 48 hours and cut it a little bit shorter. You know?
yeah, yeah. And I think especially over the last couple of weeks, as different regulations, COVID regulations have come into play,
Things are
I
tightening up.
yeah, things are tightening up, and I think we'll start to see realtors get a little bit more creative of what that looks like as well, from an offer perspective or irrevocable perspective, all sorts of different things. It's still so new in a sense where that's the case, but there's still demand and supply. The supply is not there for the demand, and we can all agree on that. That's for sure.
Well, think about that. 56 showings on one listing in 4 days, and you get one successful buyer. What are those other 55 going to do now?
Yeah,
And there's no listings coming out,
that's right.
or
That's
hardly
right.
any.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And I say too, it's too bad we can't just like fast forward or get that snowball going down the hill a little bit, because there's probably not quite, but there's close to 56 sellers in that group as well, right?
I'm sure there are, but
Right.
they're all like, they don't want to have people coming into their home.
Yeah.
Different reasons. Or some people are going, well, geez, the market's going to get better in the spring. We should wait until. There's that mentality about always waiting for the spring, no matter what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
That we have to combat in December. Well, I'll wait till spring. Well, maybe you're better to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So there's that as well. Some people could just be waiting till the spring, and some people are waiting because they're going to see the prices, take they think they're going to take a crest up, but they could also come down the other way. So.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, as we kind of wrap things up here, Steve, I'd love to get your thoughts on, and I know it's kind of come out throughout the interview, but I'd love to get your specific thoughts on, what makes a great realtor. Like, what makes a great successful realtor, I should say.
Was that a question that was on our list, Gary? I can't remember.
Yes, I'm going to say yes. I should say, I sent Steve a list of questions. He goes, "Oh my gosh, this might be a 3-hour interview."
Yeah.
And I'm sure we could get a couple of beers going here. We'd let it for sure. I love chatting with you on this type of stuff.
Yeah. I think you have to invest in yourself as an agent. I started in a coaching program actually in 1992. I met a lot of great agents at that time, and there's still some of us that are still in the business, and I'm still in touch with some of them. And there weren't many coaching programs around in those days. So one of the reasons that I did join Keller Williams, because there was that philosophy within the company. Now, I've never been a MAPS coaching client because I had relationships elsewhere, but just to have, the topics brought up within the company, within just KWRC in itself, or whatever market center you're in, and have that availability to you if you wanted it. It's great. We didn't have that. We learned by doing. And I think the learning curve has been shortened because of the availability of coaching. So I think that all agents should really invest in themselves, whether it's by reading a book or by being coached, especially by being coached, I think nowadays, because it's available to you. You learn, and you have to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
It's really important to learn how to learn, not just learn how to do, but learn how to learn, because then that speeds up the whole process of what you have to do, and learn what books you should be reading. Like the E-Myth, was a book that came out in the 90s by Gerber.
Yeah.
And that was how to set up a business, whether you were a realtor or a baker or a candlestick maker. That was an invaluable book, and it still is today. So, be a self-learner, be a self-starter. Fight your fears. It's hard to pick up the phone sometimes. The phone's actually meant for outgoing calls, not just incoming calls. That's what
Right.
Richard Robbins always said that one. I thought that was a good one. Learn how to focus on what you're doing and be disciplined, and show up. If you stayed out, till 10 o'clock one night, whether on, for personal reasons or on an offer situation, show up the next day. Still, if you start your day at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, still start at 8:30 or 9 o'clock. Because it's those seeds that you're planting in those times of the day that will sprout sometime later. So just be consistent in what you do. Choose what it is that you're going to do, and then be consistent in it. Have integrity, and treat people the way you would want to be treated, whether they're your clients, your peers, or your competitors for that matter. So I think if you follow those things, that helps you to be successful. And I think fighting your fears is a big one, because we all have fears,
Yeah.
and you could be on a roll and you could fall off that wagon, and those fears come back to haunt you again, and you just got to jump back on that wagon again. So I think that was an important one for me. So
Yeah. There's a lot there, so thank you for that. And it's one of the, learn how to learn. I love that comment, because it's easy to just go read something or listen to insightful insights like this, but to learn how you're going to apply that to your daily routine or to your life, that to me is the key, right?
that was the whole thing, even about going to college or university, wasn't necessarily to learn your field. And yes, when you're an engineer and a doctor, you need to do that. But if you're going in for a general program, they're really teaching you how to learn is what they're doing. And then you can apply that to the rest of your life.
Yeah.
I learned by doing all the way through. Back in our day, we didn't have to go to university. Yes, I did. But actually, I went to Ryerson and I studied business administration. But because we were working in the theater in those days, I had a better opportunity of learning by doing. So that's the path that I took.
Right.
You don't get that as an option as much anymore. But it is a great option. And also by volunteering, that's another way that you learn. If you're a young realtor, you may want to think about working on a team or volunteering on another team, and learning how to do it. Because when jobs do open, who do you think those people are going to hire? They're going to hire those people that they've been impressed with already. They're not going to go out and run ads in Indeed or wherever else they run ads. If they have somebody that's already been volunteering within their system, maybe they'll be bringing them on as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, people that you're already in a relationship with, right?
Yes.
Or you've already proven you have a proven track record with that relationship.
That's right, and their trust, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, Steve, I appreciate this time. I'm sure many others do. If people want to reach out to you or learn more about the Peroff team, how do they do that?
By email, steve@teamperoff.com. The office is 905-476-3131. If you're with KWRC, I'm in extension 853.
There you go, 853. I like it. That's the best way. Steve, again, I appreciate your time, your expertise, your knowledge, and certainly getting to know you much better. And I wish you all the tremendous success in 2021, and you and your team, and Colleen and your family. And thank you for this, because there's a lot of awesome insight here, and I know a lot of agents and a lot of people are going to get tremendous value from this. So thank you so much.
I hope so. Thank you for the invite, and good luck to everybody throughout 2021 and through COVID and what's going on in the world. Keep safe, keep healthy, and keep happy.
Very good. Bye for now,
Thanks.
everybody.
Bye-bye.